Initiating moisture.
There's a very popular trend in modern horror movies where you make them suck as much shit as possible and they're just entirely forgettable. Luckily, that's not the case with it. I really enjoyed the first one from start to finish. I thought it did a great job in its horror elements as well as its comedy. The comedy really stood out to me because when you go to a Stephen King movie adaptation, the only comedy you're usually getting is unintentional because they suck some fat fucking asshole. That wasn't the case with it, and it really stood out to me. I really enjoyed it. I think it was a very solid horror movie and just a really purely enjoyable movie start to finish. It Chapter 2 had its work cut out for it to really follow that up. And it did a great job, and a lot of it boils down to just incredible casting. Bill Hader as Richie absolutely fucking annihilates the role. He is a really, really talented actor, as well as James Ranson, the one who plays the adult Eddie. And he's basically as if the kid actor grew to a 40-year-old man in the 2 years it took in between this movie and the last one. It's like the same goddamn guy. It's as if you actually are watching the kid in an adult's body. They act the same, they basically sound the same, and they even fucking look the same. It's wild. I don't know if James Ranson's the young child actor's father or something, but it's fucking wild how similar they are. But there's no bad characters or anything like that. I just thought those two really shined, in my opinion, because once again, in an area I didn't expect it to be great in, comedy, it fucking nailed. I didn't think they could make it happen twice. I didn't think you could take Stephen King's work and make it intentionally humorous twice and have it land, but they fucking did it. And I respect that because it made me laugh a couple times. I thought it was just really well written there. As far as the horror elements go, I actually think they're weaker in this movie than the first one, and I didn't even think the first one nailed horror to a certain degree. It did it decently enough, and it was violent and brutal. It wasn't afraid to be brutal. This one's not either, but there's really less tension. This is like a fucking 3-hour movie, and at no point did I really feel them build up anything and then have it pay off or lead to something like scary or shocking. There were a few scenes where you could see them going in that direction, but they'd break it up with humor, and the joke was good, but, you kind of took away any kind of suspense or tension building, or it just didn't build the suspense very well, or it was just kind of unintentionally humorous, such as like the old woman. I think that scene, most of you know what I'm talking about, it's kind of goofy. I don't know if that's the intention there. I'm sure it probably is, but that's kind of where all the tension comes from, is just freeze. Bang. Kind of. Like a really light bang. It's not even like fully committed to a jump scare or something like that. So I thought the horror was even more lackluster this time around, but it was still just as brutal and still as enjoyable. And most of my complaints come towards the end of the movie, because up until then, it's actually a pretty character-driven piece. You have all of these characters going through their own little adventures, battling their own demons, their own obstacles to overcome, trying to find themselves, remember things about themselves, really discover who they are as, a loser. That's what they call themselves in the movie. If you haven't seen it, I'm not just insulting the fucking characters or the actors or anything. It's just a self-discovery piece, and it's really enjoyable to watch, and it does a good job with its themes, I'd say. But it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you have them going on this mission of finding themselves and what they want to be, what they're hiding, what they've forgotten, and you don't really put a whole lot of horror into it. Yes, in all of their situations, Pennywise is there kind of fucking it up and making them face it head on, trying to bring out the fear. I get that, but it's just not very effective. It's far more emotional, I'd say. And also in some of these arcs, the CGI hurts it. Like, there's some downright goofy looking CGI moments where, you're sitting on a bench and all of a sudden you got like a fucking CGI kaiju lumberjack wielding like some type of World of Warcraft item as a fucking weapon coming at you. And it looks kind of like a video game cutscene. It's not believable. It's just really silly. And that's a little disappointing, but if it was going for silly, it nailed it. And it's hard to tell because the movie is self-aware in certain places, but then you have this whole thing that's kind of like, this is supposed to be scary, but it's not. And that comes out pretty hard at the end, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'll get into spoilers just to kind of make my point, and I'll let you know well before I get into there, but I'd really like to get that out. Another thing I really appreciated about the movie is that it wasn't afraid to shy away from being brutal again, like the first one. I always appreciate that, because in a lot of modern horror movies, even if they are R-rated, their idea of being brutal is, here's some severed arms and here's some severed legs. They don't really show how it gets to that point or what goes on. It shows you all of that shit, and I guess I can appreciate that to a certain degree, just because most modern horror movies are so pussified, just very pussied. They're just not, they don't have any bite to them. At least I think in its deaths and brutal shit, it goes kind of hard in that department. And I really just don't have a whole lot of negative things to say about this. The comedy landed when there was elements to try and make you creeped out. It sometimes worked, though it never really felt earned with enough tension built up for it. But it was always fun to see. I think the It franchise has a unique advantage where it can show you all types of fun stuff. It's not locked into just like paranormal shit where a chair is moving weirdly or somebody's possessed and they're walking around like fucking Frankenstein's monster, hands out. It shows you a lot of cool shit. You have a clown just fucking with you and showing you some really cool shit, and I really enjoyed that, even if it wasn't all that scary. Now, at the end of the movie, now I am going to get into spoilers, just a few spoilers, forewarning if you want to avoid that. The end of the movie gets downright very silly to me. I think the CGI with Pennywise the spider doesn't really work all that well. It looks like some low-budget Dead Space shit to me. I didn't think that was very intimidating, and I really don't like that trope of, he's been omniscient this whole time, and now all of a sudden characters can kind of sneak around to the side of him while he's distracted slapping at a wall. Yeah, this entire movie, he knows everything going on everywhere about every single one of these characters. Now, when they infiltrate his lair at the very end, he has no idea where they're going or what's going on. That makes no sense. That's when he should be strongest, right? And even if he can't, read their minds like he has been able to, all he had to do was, out of his fucking peripherals, he would have seen people sneaking around to his right and maybe acted sooner and stopped them in their tracks. It's just a horror movie trope, I suppose. And I also thought when they defeat him, it looked extremely easy, and it's something he should have expected, because it's kind of what they fucking did in the first one already. They basically just defeat him by insulting him. Hey, your dick's small. You're just a clown. You're just a small clown. You're a clown. You're a clown. You're a clown. He starts shrinking and shrinking. Oh no, you're hurting my feelings. I'm big. I'm big. I'm big. No. And then they crush his heart, and that's the end of it. It's underwhelming. And I know that's how I understand it follows the book a bit. I didn't read the book, but I understand that this shit happens in the book as well. So I get it, but as when they were younger, you can excuse it because it's kids doing it. It's very different when you have 40-year-old men and women doing it. Like, you're a clown, you're small, fuck your stupid dumb stuff, and he's shrinking. It's just a little goofier, and it really wasn't that threatening at the end, in my opinion, especially after, you have 2 movies to build up a final showdown, and you get it like that, where it just ends up a roast, really shitty roast. Just kind of underwhelming. That's my only, actual huge complaint, just because I felt that was just not very good. But putting that aside, let's plug It Chapter 2 into the moist meter. I'm giving It Chapter 2 a nice 80%. I think it is a very enjoyable movie with a lot to offer anyone. It has a very long runtime, but I think it's warranted. I think there's enough substance in the movie. I think nothing really feels overly rushed, and I just really enjoyed it start to finish. A very solid horror flick that's surprisingly humorous. That's about it. See ya.